Well, Owen, I am afraid that people are being a little critical of my music selection. Thank you, Jason Waltman. Hey, Chris. David Body's here. We've got a big day. It's a big show. A big professional show. Because you know that ThursdAGE stars Owen Casey Stevens, and you know he is, as you all already know. I mean, people who watch this regularly. Hey, Duke, good to see you. Very glad that you are here and you made it in time. But I think that everybody in chat will testify that Owen Casey Stevens is indeed the nicest guy in the biz. I've had like professional witness testimony. Ren's here. Good to see you, Ren. People like Crystal Frazier. I mean, my own self, the disembodied voice of Troy. We, all of us, we all agree that Owen Casey Stevens is the nicest guy in the biz. What do you say, chat? A good ThursdAGE to you all. Owen is here. He is being very quiet, which
I'm right here.
He's there. He's there. I don't know why he's using his Kermit the Frog voice, but let's, how about this?
There we go.
It's
you.
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
Chris is good. Chris even asked, what graphic overlay do you have in store for Owen this week?
Yeah, I should have seen this coming. I really should have.
I like to have a little fun because, we do enjoy our time here on ThursdAGE, which is a Fantasy Age live stream mostly, generally, but it touches on all the ages, right?
Are you saying that we're an all ages stream?
I am now. That's exactly right. And I did that on purpose. Yes. Yeah. So we talk about Fantasy Age. We often have guests. We hang around and we talk about really what we do. And let's just not fool ourselves. What we do is we sit down and we just sort of dig around in Owen's brain and we see what kind of amazing things ends up coming out. And by and large, it's pretty impressive stuff. I generally end up inspired and excited and pleased.
You dig around in my brain, see what comes out, and then wait to see if one of our friends will illustrate it.
That's right. That is true. That is exactly right. So we really do have quite a bit of fun and we enjoy it. And so if you're joining us for the first time, say hello. I want to say hi to Alexander. Of course, Brian, I said hello to you, and Duke is here on time. Ren said, I made it. And so we've got quite a packed house. And so regardless of where you are, checking us out, be sure to drop a line and today's a big day. And we've got, like I said, we got some stuff going on, don't we?
We do. There's some, I keep saying over and over and over that we've got the Fantasy Age core rulebook and that it's got, some new setting stuff. But this isn't the time to talk about it. I kept saying it's not time.
That's right.
We're not there. Oh my goodness! Someone who last saw me at Neon Con. That's been a decade.
Back in your raver days?
I mean, Neon Con was in Vegas, right? So,
what is? I'm curious as to what is Neon Con.
Neon Con was a gaming science fiction convention that took place in Vegas in like 2012, 2011, right around there. I was one of the guests for it, as was my friend Stan.
Stan. We like Stan.
We had a teach you to be a RPG writer seminar line that was a paid seminar line that got left out of the ticket system, so no one knew it existed. So we had about 3 people for it, which I thought was really good for something that hadn't been advertised. Yeah.
Well, how fun. Well, good deal. Glad that you are here, Derek. And you picked a great day because, as Owen was saying, we've been sort of, I was going to say stringing people along. Hey, Philip, good to see you. Glad you have joined us. Philip says, I am so excited to learn about this book. We didn't really string people along, but we did sort of.
No, I mean, we talked about the book a lot, and we talked about a lot of the quality of life improvements and the rule improvements, and the fact that it's going to work with all the other Fantasy Age adventures and supplements. That it's not a new edition; it's a new take on the same edition. But we have very carefully not talked about the cover, which was not something that we were ready to preview, and we hadn't talked about the setting. I kept saying things like Freeport's included in the setting, but it's not set in Freeport. And that sort of let everybody know that, we were going to be keeping a kind of horror, fantasy, adventure, swashbuckling theme, and certainly those are elements of what we want to be able to do with the game. But we're starting someplace a little different, and we're doing that all on purpose. And eventually, I figured we'd talk about it. Eventually,
eventually
today, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I am furiously clicking on the mouse because I want us just to take a look at this art.
Almost there.
It is so.
Stay on target.
There we go. Kind of.
Yeah. So that's a Wayne Reynolds art cover. I love Wayne's work. Obviously, I saw a lot of it when I was primarily doing Pathfinder work. And he's been a very important part of defining the look of Freeport, which Freeport dates back to 2000 at Green Renine, but had originally been a OGL/D&D kind of setting. And then I was brought on board to help it be a Pathfinder setting. And now here I am working on Fantasy Age. And wouldn't you know it, we're going to have it in the Fantasy Age as part of the setting, but part of the setting. So this cover has a lot of little details that don't matter to you unless you're the sort of person who likes to track behind the scenes stuff. For example, we've got 2 people on the cover. One of them is our iconic warrior that was taken from the Fantasy Age basic rulebook front cover. You will see her with the flaming sword there, and we've had her some other places. And the other is a character from the Freeport City of Adventure Pathfinder book. So these 2 people have not previously been in the same universe, and putting them together is one of the ways that I wanted to figure out how these 2 somewhat different aesthetics work. And the way they work is you get Wayne Reynolds to draw them, paint them.
Yeah.
This is obviously a gorgeous cover, and they fit. They feel like the same universe here. And then, of course, they're fighting serpent folk, because serpent folk are an ongoing threat in the Freeport setting.
Now, they're fighting serpent cultists, right?
So serpent folk that you have run into have classically been a problem. I'm going to go into the Wayback Machine and say that I, in many ways, think of serpent folk as being similar to Sleestack from the original Land of the Lost television show for kids, which I was exactly the right age for Land of the Lost when it was coming out. Not the abomination that is the Will Ferrell movie, but the original Land of the Lost. Not even the remake that they did in the original Land of the Lost. You had Sleestack, which were a civilization that had different directives and different interests than the people around it, and therefore tended not to be a good neighbor on a national scale. And then you had Enoch, who was a Sleestack, but was a Sleestack from a culture at a different point in time.
Oh, right.
And he had a very different set of cultural mores and norms and philosophy and education. So I'm not saying all serpent folk are automatically bad and evil, and you should kill them on sight, and it's never going to be an issue. And they've got, runes on their forehead that says "kill me" and 15 gold will pop out. But there are a lot of serpent folk groups and organizations and belief systems in place that is going to cause them to often not be on the same page as heroes. And obviously, what we have here is more than a misunderstanding over a gooseberry pie, right? This is a very much a full-on heroic assault. You can see that our heroes are back to back. We've got two different fighting styles here. We've got a two-weapon fighting style. We've got a sword and shield fighting style. The very fact that we had someone with a flaming sword on the cover meant that I went back and started thinking about, hey, how would I do a flaming sword in Fantasy Age if I wanted it to be something cool and interesting that you enjoyed, and not just, hey, I do extra damage and the damage happens to have the word fire after it. So if anything says it's vulnerable to fire, or I give this the GM, I can set wooden buildings on fire, whatever. So all these elements, all these free porty elements are definitely part of the setting. But this illustration does not have to be Freeport, because we are going to have a new city in the setting that's going to have a whole island built along it that we have specifically designed as a comfortable starting point for people who are going to be new to Fantasy Age. And that doesn't mean that you have to start there, but it does give us a baseline of something that we can work on and build off of. And that is named Breakwater Bay. I did some sketches on ideas I wanted for Breakwater Bay. The always amazing Steve Kenson took my back of napkin notes and turned it into a full-blown setting.
He's a wizard.
He is. Steve is amazing. And, you know, this book has a lot of people working on it, right? I mean, Malcolm did a ton of work. I have dabbled in it. Chris Pramus, our publisher and the original creator of Fantasy Age and Freeport, has done a bunch of work on it. Yeah, someone mentioned Sandpoint. So Chris mentioned Sandpoint. Sandpoint, you know, was a famous starting city for the Pathfinder role-playing game that had a region around it that made it work for the types of adventures that they expected you to want to play. So it is our intention for Breakwater Bay and the island it is on to be easily set up for the types of adventures we expect you to want to play. And we want to have the necessary support for everything that we want in that game, right? So if we're going to have something like, oh, here are alien geometry and things from way beyond in the Stranger Shores, and we'll get to that because it's also mentioned in the new release. We want to be able to say, hey, here is a way to handle that for this game. We also worked in a number of other things. I wanted it to be much easier for characters to feel like they were different from each other early on. And that is why we have moved so that you get your very first specialization at first level as opposed to at fourth level. And your first specialization ignores a fair number of prerequisites. So if you haven't gotten all of your ability scores and such up there, for your first specialization and all the ranks you take in it, that doesn't matter because that is what you train to do up to this point. That will only matter for later stuff. So love to see more for the Lost Citadel. So one of the things that I like about this setup is that we are specifically setting things up so that Breakwater Bay is in a ocean that travels through more than just physical locations, right? It has there are weird tides, spelled with a Y, W-Y-R-D, and the weird tides are kind of alternate reality planar movement that sailing through them will get you to other locations. And people that remember Mystic Navigators from the Freeport setting already know that there are the coils in Freeport, and further away from the coils, the weirder and weirder stuff gets. So Breakwater Bay and its weird ties is the same concept. It is the same cosmology as seen through a different set of eyes. So, you know, if not many people have been spending that much attention to the coils of Yig, which is why we've got Serpent Folk and all that. But that idea is the same idea as the weird tides, and that lets us do things like say, hey, sometimes you will have a storm, and that storm will bring something from a much further away, much more distant stranger shore, and that strange shore has things on it that do not belong on the island that you're on, that's not native to here. Or there are groups that like to try and sail out and engage in conquest, but there are places they can't get to because they don't have powerful enough mystic navigators to get them through the necessary weird tides. But those things shift over time. So you might find it used to be that this particular very expansive empire that is aggressive and wants to take over as many different lands as it can used to not be able to make it here. And the GM has the option of saying, okay, a ship shows up and it's only got a few people left on it because it was battered and smashed by a storm and lost, and it ended up here entirely at random. But there are those people from this empire on it. They're going to cause trouble. And if that line is something he wants to pick up on, a small scout ship can show up later and just look at the island and then sail away. And then they start to navigate away through it. And the weird tides can actually bring islands to be metaphorically closer together so that it is easier for them to visit and overlap.
Fun.
That also means that if you have other things that you want to do using age material, like if you've got the Trojan War book, you can say, hey, the Trojan War is a mythic Greece, which it's a different world, but you can sail from here to there or from there to here. So if I want to do a set of adventures that invoke those things, I can have a mythic Greek ship just show up in Breakwater Bay, and that's an issue. Or two, one Greek ship and one Trojan ship, and they're fighting it out. You all have to pick sides. Or you can just say, hey, we're using the demigod rules from there because that works with this. So things like Freeport and a bunch of other stuff that we're genuinely not ready to announce. There's things that we are seeing. We can interweave them into this setting very easily. And you don't have to use that cosmology, but it gives us a framework on which we can introduce, this is how these things would show up, so you don't have to do that work if you don't want to.
Oh, and we got a good question on deck.
Yeah, hit me.
What is the name of the new 4th basic class I read mentioned for the new?
So then we're going to have a 4th class. That class is the Envoy. We batted that title around a lot because there are envoys in Blue Rose, and this isn't the same. And there are envoys in Starfinder, which is the role-playing game I worked on the most before coming to ThursdAGE. And these aren't the same as that. But after a lot of wrestling and considering and thinking, we really decided that at the level of mage, warrior, rogue, envoy is what we're talking about. We're talking about someone who is very specifically able to engage in social situations, sort of the way that mages engage in magical situations and the way that warriors engage in combat, and that rogues engage in ranged combat and exploration. So we've had social stunts that you can access with stunt points using our normal Fantasy Age rules, but no one really designed to specifically focus on that. And in order to do that, up till now, people usually either said, okay, I'm going to play a rogue and I'm just not going to worry about backstabbing and everything else. I'll focus all my efforts elsewhere. But that means you did not have that sort of key ability, right? I mean, rogues have some key things they can pick up, and we've changed how you pick up those abilities. But our Envoy specifically has some options designed for your Envoy to be good at getting people to work together and possibly being a leader or possibly being an advisor, so that you would rather have an Envoy in the group than not, right? So if you're like, okay, we know why we want a mage because we want access to magic, and we know what we want a warrior, we want something to hit something hard, and we know why we want a rogue, so we need to be able to sneak, and we want them to be able to shoot things and stab things. And you now know why you have the Envoy, because they will make everyone else work together. So kind of like bards, but without the link to musical abilities.
One might say almost like, like bringing your own community manager with you.
Sure, right? In case we're talking about community managers for some reason recently in the RPG sphere. You know, it's a trope that shows up in fantasy and adventure fiction a lot. And yes, you can go straight to the A team and say, hey, they've got the face man, right? But it's also just not at all unusual for, oh, here is the hobbit that ends up being an ally of Denethor and becomes a page and moves into the high court. Here is the young nobleman who isn't the best fighter and isn't good at magic, but is good at talking to people and working with the rules and representing. So we have, you know, some magic dabbling specializations, and we have some musical focus specializations. So if you want to play an envoy and go sort of the classic D&D/Pathfinder musical bard route, you can do that. But at its core, this is a social engaging character because we have a whole set of rules for that and no one who's really focused on using it, while we have built the framework of this class to specifically have combat relevant options so that you're not going, well, a fight started, I'm useless now. That's not what we want. We want you to be able to engage and have choices, but have those choices be different and meaningful in different ways.
Well, Old Man Zandit says, well, but you can play as a bard. So it's not meant as a bard replacement. It's meant as a, what would be the real world allegory to this?
Hostage negotiator.
Well, okay. Sure.
Right? I mean, a hostage negotiator can, even in a combat situation, but also the tactician, right? The squad sergeant, the mayor of the town. Just like with a warrior, you can say, hey, the warrior equivalent is obviously a soldier, but it could also be a mercenary or a gladiator or a boxer. So someone
hold
just
on, real quick before we grab that, I want to go back in time just because, you know, I think that it can be very easy for folks. You know, we have been, you know, I'm steeped in this all day. You and I've been doing ThursdAGE for about 1 million years. People who have been playing, you know, they're in this, and there was somebody brought up a good point that I just want to raise, but I want to raise it as more even as a reminder just to the community at large that, you know, as the excitement mounts and people get involved and engaged, there are going to be some new people that are going to, you know, want to get purchase. And I'm not even necessarily suggesting that Jason Sunday is a new person, but I like what Jason said is that when Watson came out with 3rd edition, that they had an article about how to start playing. And I wanted to, and that it would be nice to have something like that in the future. But I wanted to say for Jason and for everybody that we are actually endeavoring to work on that now, to put together some, you know, easy to pick up, you know, things that you can share with people who are brand new. So you can invite someone new to come play in your campaign. And one thing that I do enjoy is hearing from people, you know, what would that perfect sort of primer be? What would that look like? You know, what are some valuable sort of tools or things? And so I'd love to hear that if people have suggestions.
And you know, we do Ronin roundtables, and one of the purposes of those is to allow the developers to say, hey, here's an idea that we don't want to do a whole book around,
right?
But that we think is useful for our readers and our players and our fans. So if it didn't show up anywhere else, I am reasonably sure when the new core rulebook's out, I'll be writing a Ronin roundtable saying, hey, well, welcome to Fantasy Age. We're excited to have you on board. Here's how to get started. So one of the reasons I have been hitting the drum so hard that the core rulebook is not a new edition is that it's going to be very easy for it to look like a new edition because this is a relaunch opportunity for us, right? We've had the basic rulebook. It's been out for a while. We've done a lot of support products, but there are specifically some things that we think we could have done better. We would have liked to have a lot more adventure support. We would have liked to have a very specific easy to access and or free quick start, that kind of thing. So you can do those anytime, but core rulebooks draw attention. Core rulebooks are what cause news sites to say, hey, there's a new game.
That's right.
It's what makes people look at them for what are we going to do on the mailing list. And it's also sort of like the issue 1 or issue 0 of a comic book line. Sometimes comic book publishers renumber their stories, not because they don't have room for 3 digits, but because if someone comes in and they see the Amazing Adventures of Wombat Man is on issue 244, and Underground Detective, the other comic that he's in a lot, is on issue 416, they're like, well, I don't want to have to read 415 issues of something to come after this. Whereas if you go have a new comic line, hey, it's the same storyline, same workers, same artist. We will be publishing it where we used to have Underground Detective, but now it will be the Fuzzy Wombat Man. We're going to rename the comic. We're going to call it issue number 1, because a new person can look at that and go, oh, this is number 1. Or if it's number 5, well, they're not that deep into it. There's certainly not 415 issues into it.
That's right.
So that same logic. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and that is truly a significant piece, because people onboarding to a new, they want to enjoy it and they want to, but that's a lot of catching up to do. And especially, tabletop role-playing games, while it is not a serial comic, you've got lives that have lived and adventures that have been had, and some baked in kind of community understandings of interpretations of things, and that's had a lot of conventions to sort of cement itself. So yeah, that makes sense to me, both as somebody who's a consumer and as somebody who wants more people to play. There's a question right now. Can we speak to page count?
So the final page count has not been decided. It will be bigger than the basic rule book. I don't. If I do my job right, we will not hit 300 pages. I want a lot of stuff in there, but I also do not want to scare small children. When I worked on the Freeport City of Adventure book, that thing comes in at 500 and something pages. And it's one of my very favorite books that I was a developer for, because it has details on individual shops and background and history and an adventure and seeds for more adventures. And it has headlines from the local newspaper. But there are people who see it, who like Freeport, right? Fans of Freeport, who play Pathfinder, who pick this thing up and go, I'm never going to read all that. And not only am I never going to read all that, I'm never going to find anything in that. So
right.
Fantasy Age is not as crunchy or complicated a rule system as most of the things I am known to be associated with. It is not as crunchy or complicated as Starfinder or either edition of Pathfinder or 3.0 or 3.5 or second
this
edition
very program.
Or this program is way more complicated than Fantasy
It truly
Age.
is. Truly is.
So my expectation is that you will be looking at definitely significantly fewer than 300 pages. But the book isn't laid out yet. So I don't want to give you I have a target number page count. I have been in contact with Hal, who does our layout and our art ordering, and he is on board with that page count and a word count, and it doesn't exist yet. So the split second I were to do something like, say, it's going to be 272 pages, right, to pick a number that no book ever is. As soon as I do that, we're going to either discover, when I was going through my word count, the editor just discovered that this chapter has section 4 repeated 5 times. Oops, there goes 12 pages. Or it turns out that this stat block is only 50 words, but it takes up an entire column of text. These are the sorts of things that happen. So
I was a little disappointed, Owen, that neither you nor Hal took my suggestion of just one big page.
So way back at the dawn of time, there was a series of maps for the Forgotten Realms that came out in the back of Dragon magazine. And they did, I believe, for 16 issues, so for more than a year. And they all folded together and they formed this giant 4-foot by 4-foot map, right? So they were 1-by-1 maps that... The reason that product came out is that they had made a 4-by-4 map of the Forgotten Realms, which is the Coast had one, and we're going to be selling it in a 4.5-foot tall tube as a wall display. As here is a thing that if you're a mega fan, you can get it put on your wall. And somewhere along the line, and it wasn't my department, so I can't tell you, but somewhere between that concept where we had printers lined up and everything was set, somewhere between that and we're going to put it in stores, someone decided this was not going to be a popular product. It was too big, shipping was too expensive, it would take up too much space in someone's house. And so in that format, only a very few got made. And I had one for a long time. And then I gave it away to a huge fan of Forgotten Realms because it was not possible for them to get it, right? I only had one because I worked there at the time. So could we do a single ginormous page? Yes. Would that be the most user-friendly version of this product? No, it would not.
Fine.
And I'm serious about trying to think about the form factor that people are getting these things in.
Yeah.
So let me talk to some specific questions that have come up.
I do want to. I want to get back to Derek. I think it was Derek, real quick. Let me check. I know we talked about the Envoy. There is a question on the table for how much new is new in this, and you kind of touched on it briefly, but
every single thing was taken out individually, put on a sample slide, put under a microscope, and analyzed. We had like 3 rounds of conceptualization amongst the developers, where all the age developers had some feedback and input. We've had several years of seeing emergent behavior, things where the totality of the rules and some of the supplements have shown us what people want focus on, but they've also shown us what rules do we wish we had, because we keep saying, hey, let's do this adventure. Oh, we'll have to write in a rules section for this thing. And then later, let's do an adventure. Oh, but we still don't have that rules section. So there is a ton of material that has been tweaked. Way more has been tweaked than has been rewritten from scratch. But like throwing in the Envoy, there is stuff that we've done from scratch, so that we've said things like, we want native support for circumstances that stress you out to the point you're not performing well. So that if we wanted to have something like, hey, here's the non-Euclidean geometry, and if you look at that, it is stressful to your mind and body, that system leaves you not doing as well. We want a single native set of rules to cover that. Or, hey, it turns out that we frequently end up wanting to do things like ship-to-ship battles, or small sieges of a tower, or defending a wall. We want, or 2 armies coming at each other. We keep wanting some specific stuff that stories speak into. So we're doing those things. There are some, and then we play tested a whole bunch of it. And someone's asking me, is there a specific rulesy part that is completely changed from the play test? There again was a lot of tweaking. Nothing comes to mind that is completely changed, but that was months ago for me, and I'm not at that stage anymore. So there could be, and I would have missed it. John Lighthouser, who's a good friend, noted what races are in the core book. So we've got Beast Folk, which can include your bunny centaur if that's what you want. We've got Draken, who are potentially fire-breathing lizard dragon folk. Where's the Envoy on the cover? Either of them could be the Envoy, right? An Envoy can perfectly well have a flaming sword and a shield. But I strongly suspect that one of those serpent folk in back, not directly involved in the fight, is a serpent folk Envoy. We've got like all of the stuff that we've got in the basic rule book. So we've got elves and dwarves and orcs and all of that. We took a lot of the most popular material that fit the most easily, that was the least likely to be an optional rule, from the Fantasy Age Companion, and ported it over to integrate it into here, because there are some spell arcana, for example, that just seems obviously we should have in a core rule book for this. So they came over. But there's stuff from there are even species from the companion that we're not porting over. And that is one of the reasons why I want to make sure this book and the companion still work together. Because if you really want something that we did not put in this from the companion, we want it to be there for you.
I'm going to lump a couple of these questions together.
Yeah.
Peter Richard Scott Brooks, person with many first names, is asking about the option to create characters with the same classless option as the Expanse. And then there's another question that asks about Where did you go? Question asker.
Will there be rules for adding stuff from different
That's
age
right. That's
systems? Yeah,
it. That's
I
it.
saw
Yeah.
that question. All
Great.
right, so let's address these one at a time. Is there going to be an option for creating a classless character like from The Expanse? Also, like, for example, Modern Age? And the answer to that's really straightforward. No. That doesn't mean we're never going to do one. But this is very specifically the core book. So I want to include in it things that are core to the game. And you can absolutely have a system in place for making characters that do all the things that we expect the core characters to do from a classless model. But it is less intuitively friendly to new RPG players. And again, I am always thinking about what is the form factor, what is the cognitive load, what are the things that you have to know in order to be able to move forward. And so if I want to play someone, the advantage of having the 4 classes, right, is if someone says, ooh, I want to play a character like, pick just about any fictional fantasy character, and someone will be able to tell them, someone who's introduced into the game, that that is a mage, a warrior, a thief, or an envoy. So that allows them to just look at that 1/4 of a set of the options and make a character and have that character do the things that the adventures we're writing will expect you to be able to do. I like classless systems, right? I went from D&D to Champions. I'm a big fan of Mutants and Masterminds, which I now use Mutants and Masterminds for everything I used to use Champions for, and did before Paizo was paying me, by the way. It's sort of worked the other way around. So I can easily see us doing a book further on down the line that includes, hey, here's how to have a classless character generation for Fantasy Age, and people who are familiar with the system will have no trouble with that whatsoever. But it's not as friendly for new people, and that is why I strongly suggested, and that's the direction we went, that we not put it in our core book. I want the core book to be the core experience, the least amount of stuff we can put on a book and let you do everything that we consider is essential to this game. Michael McNeil says Mr. Talented classes. But see, the talented classes for Pathfinder First Edition aren't in the core rulebook. They are very specifically supplements. So I still think it's a great idea. I just think it's a great idea for an expansion where we can say, here are a bunch of things that you can do with the system. And you'll know that if we if we have the Fantasy Age options, expansions, and weird stuff you might not even want to use, if that's the title of a book, people will look at that and go, I'm good with my core system. Or, oh, I hope it has an alternate system so I can do stress spell casting and have the churn from the Expanse, but in a Fantasy Age game. Those are all things that there's value to, but I want them to be put aside, put somewhere else, so that people will know, if you want to be weird and different and change up the core experience, here is the less core experience. Let's not put that stuff in the core rulebook, which for a lot of people, that's the very first book that they pick up. And right. Mr. Brooks is saying, not in the core book, but in later expansion. Sounds excellent. Thank you. So I can stop talking about it now. He's gotten the point. I can.
Go ahead.
I can move on to the question of will there be rules in it for combining different age games together. The short answer is the same. No. That is something that we might well do in a Ronin Roundtable. That is something that we might well do in an expansion set. But again, I don't want the core experience to be telling you, oh, by the way, there's a bunch of stuff in these other game systems that you can add, that you don't have to add, that you can bolt on if you wanna.
Right.
But we are well aware that there is benefit to having some place where a age system engineer, someone that wants to pop the hood and put on a turbocharger, and take the wheels off a different vehicle and put it on this one and create in fact, if you go look at the Ronin Roundtable, Malcolm has been doing some, combining different age themes and games and rules things already. And those are brilliant, and I love them. They aren't designed to tell you everything, but they are one specific blueprint of how to get a different feel by blending stuff.
Well, Owen,
so I think blending those things is a good idea, but again, that's supplemental stuff, not core. core stuff.
Well, I think that this is a good time to bring this up, lest we forget that Fantasy Age, Modern Age, both of those IPs, those products, those lines, fall under a Creators Alliance umbrella. And for
Yep.
those of you who have been waiting for the Age Creators Alliance to launch, some of you may have been waiting around 4 years. It launches next week. For real. It's out of our hands. It's been transmitted. It's being prepared and prepped. Some other another company had a big launch, and so we were kind of bumped, and so yeah. But that is the very like that's a great way. Like if you want to see it, make it and sell it on Drive-Thru RPG. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Although, as with any Creators Alliance thing, read the rules of the contracts, because
That's right.
you can't make new Expanse ships because we have to have a license for the Expanse, and
That's
we
right.
cannot give parts of that license to anyone else.
That's right.
But that is a great place. So if you were, for example, inspired to try and make a modern urban fantasy game by blending elements of Modern Age and Fantasy Age, that might work great. That's the Creators Alliance switch has been flipped, and the electricity is coursing through the vast machine, and the light will come on sometime next week.
That's right. Yeah. And a big thank you to Meredith and the team over at Drive-Thru RPG. Absolutely 100% adore that human being. What a wonderful, wonderful person. Very, very helpful. Worked with us, for 4 years. Here's a crunchy question from Jason, who's asking, do we do armor? Does armor have hit points? Or has armor and hit points
been tweeted? And I think they really mean tweaked. So no, but the answer is no, because if I change the values of armor ratings and hit points, then you will end up not being fully compatible with, for example, the Bestiary, which is a big book of monsters. We're selling the PDFs all the time. I need those numbers to remain in the same range for the games to be compatible. However, there are different options within the system that will change the amount those numbers matter. And without going into too much detail, there will be more ways for people to do more damage, because we can increase that number on the supply side, on just this is how you figure out how much damage something does. And that will allow fights to go faster, because we're aware at high levels they can be a grind, without invalidating any existing creature. So that is why that's the approach we took. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to playtest stuff a lot, because I wanted to see how big a difference that makes and how well it works. And after playtesting, it got tweaked even more. So it's a known issue, and it's one I believe we've addressed. And it's for me, it's a perfect example of how this is going to be a different play experience, in that I believe we've made a number of improvements without it having to be a different game engine. You already know how to play this, and all the other stuff you have for it will still work.
So did we cover races? I remember
I covered them as much as we're going to cover.
Yeah, I'm reading as I'm listening as well. So
right.
we talked about the cheese fiends and the
if you want to call the mouse-based beast folk cheese fiends, that's fine. They're in there.
And did we touch base on the Duke had asked about specific rules and things that might have changed dramatically? I think I remember you saying that, but since the playtest. But I am curious, Owen, just as a quick sort of looking back on this, looking at the trajectory of the project and how and the various kind of touch points there were to course correct and all of that. You feeling pretty good about it?
I am super excited about this. Feeling good about it requires a level of self-awareness of how close I might be to being done, and deadlines that I am not currently in a good position to pull out. I don't know if There are days, Troy, where honestly, I don't feel good about much of anything. I'm excited. As a developer, I am professionally very satisfied with how the project is coming together. I
That's
think it's going to
great.
be a great book. I think it's going to be very popular. I think, and this all game creation as a career is to a certain extent an act of ego and arrogance, right? You're always saying, I have something, an idea that something that's so fun, you'll give me money for it. But I genuinely believe that what we're going to have is going to be a game that will be as satisfying, easier, and more fun for existing fans and appeal to a broader collection of new fans.
Two observations. One is that I always see your enthusiasm for these. You know, they are products, but you're more like that that kid that's like, I have an idea for, like, let's play this game, or let's play with, like, you are more of an you incite people to get excited and inspire, less of a, well, you look at this thing you must buy, it's $3,000 gold plated in just one page, with my face. So yeah, that
I
ain't
mean,
you.
if I got a free copy of the $3,000 gold plated rule book, I'm all in favor.
Yeah, yeah.
I I I don't have an issue with things that are made for collectors. This actually came up on my feed a while back. Someone was talking about it. Some of the new miniatures, which are sometimes 16 inches tall, or they're a 5-story building and they're 3, 4, $500.
You got it,
As people
Michael.
are
That's
saying,
right.
these are not for your typical gamer. And it's entirely true. Your typical gamer shouldn't, and I hope therefore won't, drop $500 on a single figure that is of a demigod that is going to show up once every 7 years in your gaming campaign. But there are collectors for role-playing games, and I think it's a mistake not to acknowledge that there are collectors and that they may want to collect stuff that then at least the rest of us get to see. And sometimes that ends up meaning that a company survives that wouldn't have, and there are more little tiny fungal ant archer miniatures for the rest of us, because we need 27 fungal ant archers for our fungal ant archery adventure, and we wouldn't be able to get all those, and we'd end up with just Play-Doh on little pieces of plastic spider that we bought for Halloween from a tube, and it doesn't look as good. Now, I have run games where I am making monsters out of tape and paper clips. I did that when I was the manager of the University of Oklahoma parking garage for the student union, because there would be long afternoons where my job was to sit there in case anyone left and no one would, and I'd be like, well, I've got staples and paper clips and tape, and I'm running a game tonight. I'd better make a millipede. I would tape it together and I'd put it on the table, and everyone would go like, oh, it's one of Owen's office craft monsters. Does it have little post-it note wings? And I'm like, no, jokers, but the next one will. Now it flies. Do you feel better? But one of the things that some of the people in my play group, which is also in my play test group, and these are people I've gamed with for more than 30 years in many cases, mentioned was that there are things that elevate the possibilities and the opportunities for all gamers, right? So the virtual tabletops, for example, are not mostly designed for a game. You don't even have to use maps for those. They can just be ways to communicate information if you can't get together with people, if there's, let us say, a pandemic, and you're trying to game online.
Right.
There are maps, there are miniatures, there are combat trackers, there are phone apps. And I've got right in front of me a map that Paizo made that has a lava flow on it. That's great. It's a beautiful, high-quality map, but I don't have to use it for a Paizo game. I can use that for Fantasy Age. I can use that for anything. So I don't even know how I got off on this, but what I'm trying to say is when we are making these products, we're trying to look at not just how does this fit in our business plan, but how does this fit in a larger business plan, and how can this be adapted by gamers overall? It used to be that if you had a funny shaped die in a game, people could only play that game if they went to a specialty store. That's less true now, but it's still true that probably every house in America that has more than 2 people living in it has at least 3 6-sided dice. So if they pick this thing up off a shelf, they're just, the barrier to entry has been lowered, And the brilliant design that Primus came up with for Fantasy Age means that even though we're only using 6-sided dice, we have this huge range of possibilities, and the stunt system allows it to do something that previous games that had similar dice weren't necessarily as good as doing.
Well, let's transition to stunts, but real quick, how we got here is that I was describing how that you do not create with ego, you share with joy, and I made a kind of a joke about it, and then you went on to describe with joy how you would, why that you are the best. There is a question that is about. I do like this comment. I do want to call it out. I think it's a really, really good idea. Little upset that you didn't think of going with contract. Come play yeah, expounds. Good stuff. There is a question about stunts. New stunts, better stunts, lots of stunts, no stunts. What can we expect?
So there are two tensions when it comes to stunts in Fantasy Age. One is that if there are too many stunts, people feel like it takes them forever and other players forever to pick a stunt, and that can slow down gameplay and it can raise the cognitive load. That said, some groups overcome that by everyone getting together and picking a stunt as a communal activity. I think that's wonderful where I've seen it, but not everyone plays that way. The other pressure is that if there are too few stunts, you're doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're doing the same thing he did, and you're doing the same thing he did, and it just gets less interesting. So what we have done is we have attempted to pare down the basic stunts. So there are basic combat stunts, basic social stunts, basic encounter stunts, a tight, secure number that are maybe a little more flexible than they used to be as well.
What is a base sort of simple low level stunt? Like, what is that?
So like a stunt that lets you attack, or let's say a stunt that lets you do 1 extra die of damage, right? That's a super simple stunt.
Yeah.
Burn 2 stunt points to do 1 more die of damage. Simple. Everyone has access to it. Great.
Gotcha.
We then give people access to additional stunts in a few different ways. One of them, for example, is that there are stunts that you can access when you get a stunt boost for part of your character. So when I get a stunt boost, I can either take a basic stunt and make it cheaper. There are rules and limits. Or I can select a specialty stunt. Now, that means as a player, if I'm playing a warrior and I'm at first level, I don't have to worry about any of that. I don't have to know what they are. There does not matter how many warrior stunts there are. I can't use any. And then I look through them when I get the option and I decide I'm going to pick this one. So yes, I did briefly have to worry about all of them. But once I have that one, I've got the basic stunts and this one warrior stunt. And if the envoy has their basic stunts and 1 envoy stunt, and the mage has their basic stunts and 1 mage stunt, then I don't have to know what their stunts are, but they're still doing more different things. And the stunts are written out very carefully to make sure that the GM does not have to have them all memorized, right? They're pretty straightforward. Do an extra die of damage to the same target, make an extra attack, move a certain distance, whatever. There are also, yes, stunt attack is in the core rulebook. Yes. Stunt attack, the ability to attempt to make a maneuver, and then you get stunt points, which you can use for something. That's in the core rulebook. It is also not the only way to get stunt points without rolling doubles in the core rulebook. There's at least one other I can think of on top of my head. One of the things that happened in one of the playtests was someone was super excited about their new stunt, and they didn't roll doubles for like 3 game sessions in a row. Now, is that statistically unlikely? Yep, sure is. Are outliers a thing? Yep, sure are. Yep. So I wanted to sit there and think, am I locking too much of this game behind luck? Because for most people, that's not an issue. It's going to come up about the same amount all the time. But there are outliers. And there are people who are out. I don't believe in luck as a force that makes things happen. But there are people who roll badly more than other people just because statistics say if you get enough people playing, that will happen. Mm-hmm. So some of those people believe that they have bad luck and will continue to roll poorly. And they have a harder time getting excited about things that require luck. So the stunt attack as an action allows us to say, hey, if you do this thing, you get some stunt points. You can depend on that. You can plan around it. And there's at least one other way I put in where you've got some stunt points you can play with without having to roll doubles.
I like that. The other thing too that's really great about that is that approach does take in sort of this holistic kind of making sure if a person is just like I'm just a bad luck person, that's a they are not having fun, and and
Right.
that and I know people like that. I definitely have friends in my life that just kind of walk around feeling like okay, great, that they would be unhappy about a luck mechanic that we're really dependent on actual luck. Yeah, that's great. Let's see. I want to. Oh yeah, so did you just kind of pull this out of the adventure hole or
Fungal ant archers? Yeah, that was just off the top of my head.
see, yeah, yeah. I rest my case. That's great.
But
So
it's based on the fact that there is in the real world a fungus that will grow on ants and
yeah.
zombify them and force them to go to different places so the fungus can spread.
Isn't
So
that
I'm just
wild?
saying, what?
That's
Yeah,
wild. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
it's fantastic. Yeah.
Last of Us is riffing off that. So I was just taking that and adding that the fungus is maybe a little smarter than the real world fungus and happens to be able to spit hard, sharp shuriken mushroom caps at you.
Okay, I love it. This is a good question. It's not even actually a question, a statement, but I have a question. You have the mini starburst. What flavor is your what are you going to pick for your mini? Are you just gonna
Orange.
orange? Interest not expecting orange. Okay. You are
Man,
a
orange is my favorite dessert fruit flavor, and orange chocolate is my favorite flavor combination, full stop.
gotcha. All right. Well, good. You've heard it here first, friends. Make yours orange. Let's see. Yeah, Jason brings up a good point. We've talked about this in the past as well. It's just that whole notion of if you don't take the time to know what you want to do and you want to have that vast library there, you end up having to sit down and sort of you know,
Yeah.
read a whole, 40 pages of stunts. Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons that when you get a stunt boost as a character, you can select from a class stunt, but you can also take a basic stunt and just make it cheaper. Is there going to be a new character sheet? Yes, there will have to be
Yeah.
a new character sheet.
Ren asks, and it is answered. Let's see. Here's an interesting question. I'm not immediately clear what they're talking about. Ty says, will you be adding the gritty, pulpy, epic health scale?
So in modern age, there are different modes of play, and they determine how much health you have and how quickly you get knocked down, and therefore how dangerous being shot at is, right? And the answer, again, on the Fantasy Age core is no. I'm a big fan of that scale, but I don't want to confuse the issues on the core play by telling people that the GM can decide you have half as many, or depending on your level, a quarter as many hit points. That is something that I want to put in the same book that will have the option for making Fantasy Age characters without classes.
Owen, it's 2:58. Which means we're done here in just a minute. But before we sign off, anything that you want to touch on, anything you want to make sure people take away from this, anything that we want to take to the next, Derek asked a question, will phage weapons and other equipment be expanded? That's a big topic, huh?
Equipment has been expanded a little bit. The question of damage values adjusted, no, because I don't want to lose backwards compatibility. So damage values aren't adjusted by equipment. They are adjusted at the character class and character level, so that if I've got my character, I can pick up equipment from anywhere and anywhen. And then Chris says, ahem, when? Next year.
I like that. And Gabe, yeah, I apologize. If we will pick this up again and talk about some of the missing pieces,
Absolutely.
based on questions,
and send your questions to Troy at
Dude.
let's play at greenranine.com.
I'll tell you, those go right to the front of the line. We built an
absolutely do.
entire shows out of
We did an
those.
entire show based off a question coming in.
That's absolutely right. A couple things that I want to talk about. It is Free RPG Day is coming today, so it's going to be on Saturday the 16th. We have the Blue Rose Quick Start, and it is we are probably at, I think it's like 4 million stores. Your friendly game store. Check it out. Go and see. Touch base with your friendly game store and see if they are participating in free RPG. We're calling them. I've been talking to so many store owners. It's a very 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 cool group of people, and it's but it's a lot. It's a lot, and they are prepared. They're ready. So get you your free stuff, and that'll be, again, that's this Saturday, the 16th, right? That's Saturday, yeah. And then we'll have some. Pay attention to social media as well, because we'll have much information there. Um, Gosh, Owen, I don't know if I should say this part. Um, I'll say this: keep your eye on Roll20 if you're a Roll20 fan, and maybe you like superheroes. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
Seems safe. That seems a safe thing to say.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, fantastic. Owen, anything from you as we wrap it up? Anything you want to end on? Anything you'd like to share?
You asked me if there was one takeaway I wanted people to come away with.
Yeah.
If you see people online calling this a new edition, be polite, be friendly, be welcoming, but feel free to let them know it's not a new edition. It's a new rule book with quality of life improvements that works with all the existing stuff. Because
100% backwards compatible. Yeah.
We don't want people to feel like we're asking them to throw away their big shelf,
their collection of tomes, right. Their dusty tomes. Right. So Jason, our friend Jason, who generally has got a kind of a sort of a meta story happening, sort of just under the surface. Today it was sort of attack monkeys of some kind, and can't wait to read that later. A little Easter egg for you, so check that out. Jason does say, I think this is for some nerd cred. Love the Shadowfinder cover. So yeah.
I have just released on my blog, owenkcstevens.com, the work in progress of the cover of the book I will be releasing on Starfinder Infinite, hopefully next week, called Shadowfinder.
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. Truly appreciate it. Do remember that we do Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and we do them every Monday with Crystal Fraser, Steve Kenson, myself, Alex Thompson comes in, Alex, our good friend, my dearest friend. I love Alex. He's great. But we've got some big plans coming for that. So it's 2 p.m. Pacific in these same places. We just kind of change around the furniture a little bit and the faces. Though Owen is known to haunt in the background. And then, if you're a Mutants and Masterminds fan, you'll want to roll your way to that episode. So, it'll be fun. And with that, I want to say thank you, everybody, for paying attention to our little program. We really, truly enjoy it. Make sure that you send a note to let's play at greenronin.com with ideas or questions. Send complaints to your mom. And I think that's it. Anything else for the good of the order, Owen?
Let's call that it.
Let's call that it. An extra 3 minutes for you, friends. Free. Bad pun, Troy. Thank you, folks. Have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.